It was late October 2015. I was driving back to my apartment in Columbus, Ohio, after visiting a friend. It was about a 2 hour drive, mostly back roads through farmland and patches of forest. I remember it was a chilly night, around midnight, and the roads were dead quiet. I had the window open just a little, letting in the cool air to keep myself alert. I was just passing through an isolated stretch with nothing but fields on either side and a thick line of trees along the horizon. The moon was out, casting this silver glow over everything. So it wasn't completely pitch black, just dim and eerie. The atmosphere felt strange, heavy, as if something was pressing down on the whole area. I didn't think much of it until I rounded a corner and saw something odd in the road. About 100 yards up, there was this huge dark shape in the middle of the road. At first, I thought it might be a fallen tree or maybe a large deer, but as I got closer, I realized it was something much stranger. I slowed the car down, gripping the wheel as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. The figure was tall, easily over 6 feet. Its skin looked leathery or maybe even covered in some sort of dark, rough feathers. It was hard to tell in the dim light, but one thing I could see was the wings. They were huge, bat-like wings. As I got closer, my headlights fully illuminated it, and that's when I felt a jolt of pure terror. The creature looked up, right at me. Most of the creature's face I could not see, apart from two enormous red eyes that seemed to glow, reflecting the headlights back at me. The creature's skin was a dark grey, and the creature had long, pointy ears. It looked otherworldly, like nothing I've ever seen before. I was frozen in my car, hands gripping the wheel, so hard my knuckles were white. I couldn't look away from those eyes. They were intense, unblinking, filled with a kind of intelligence that felt both terrifying and ancient. It was as if the creature was deciding whether I was a threat or just another thing passing through its territory. Then it did something I will never forget. The creature started to flap its wings while staring at me. I was terrified. I just could not move. I don't know if it was just adrenaline or pure instinct, but I snapped out of my trance and slammed my foot on the brake. The screech of my tires seemed to break the silence, and the creature cocked its head, those red eyes never leaving me. For a moment, I thought it might charge at the car. I could almost feel the weight of it pressing down on me, as if it were daring me to get closer. And then, with a powerful downward thrust of its wings, it took off, lifting off the ground into the air. It hovered for a second, its wings beating with this slow, steady rhythm, like it was taunting me. Then, in one fluid motion, it soared upward and disappeared into the darkness, vanishing above the tree line. I didn't move for what seemed like an eternity. My mind was racing, trying to process what I'd just seen, but there was no logic to it. Nothing I knew could explain it. I finally managed to pull myself together and I floored it, speeding down the road, eyes darting, half expecting to see it swoop down again. When I got home, I was still shaken. I tried telling a couple of friends, but they laughed it off, saying it was probably just because I was tired or I'd seen an owl or a crane. But I know what I saw. To this day, I avoid that road at night. I don't know if anyone else has seen it, and maybe it was just a one time thing. But every now and then, when I'm driving alone at night, I feel that same heavy sensation, like something's waiting. And every time I remember those red eyes staring back at me. It happened in the summer of 2022, when my friends and I went camping in Rocky Mountain National Park for one night. We had planned the trip a week before and we were all looking forward to it. Our campsite was nestled in a remote spot off a narrow trail, surrounded by towering pines and rugged terrain. After setting up camp and cooking dinner over the fire, we all settled in for some drinks. As the hours wore on, we were in high spirits, laughing and sharing stories, our faces lit only by the flickering fire. The stars were brilliant above us, and aside from the occasional sound of a night animal, it was a calm and peaceful evening. Eventually, it got late, and one by one, people started heading to their tents. I was the last one still up, finishing off my drink when I felt the call of nature. I didn't want to wake anyone up by stumbling around the tents, so I grabbed my flashlight and went off a little ways into the trees to find a secluded spot. I walked about 20 yards or so, just far enough to be out of sight of the campfire's glow. The night was incredibly still and the air was cold and crisp. There was this strange silence, even though I knew the woods were usually alive with sound even at night. I thought it was weird, but shrugged it off as just nerves. I found a spot, turned off my flashlight, and I got ready to do my thing. Just as I was about to finish up, I heard a faint rustling sound coming from deeper in the trees off to my right. I froze. My heart started to pound. It wasn't a small noise like a squirrel or a raccoon. This was heavier, like something big moving slowly through the brush. I turned my head, straining my eyes in the dark, but all I could see was shadows and thick trees. I tried to tell myself it was probably a deer. This was the Rockies after all. But the noise grew closer, and the hairs on the back of my neck started to stand up. I flicked my flashlight and aimed it towards the sound, sweeping it slowly back and forth. At first, I couldn't see anything out of the ordinary, just trees, rocks, and the thick undergrowth. But then, as I moved the beam slightly to the left, I saw it. There, just beyond reach of the light, was a figure. It was crouched low, as if it were watching me. At first, I thought it was a person, maybe even one of my friends trying to scare me, but as my eyes adjusted, I realized that this was no human. The creature was crouching, with limbs that seemed too long for its body. Its skin was an odd, sickly grey colour, almost blending in with the bark of the trees. Its arms were thin, almost skeletal, with fingers that ended in what looked like claws. Its eyes glowed a faint, unnatural yellow in the beam of my flashlight, and its mouth, I couldn't even describe it properly. It was twisted, stretched into a strange, unnatural grimace that showed rows of sharp, uneven teeth. I was completely frozen, too terrified to even breathe. I don't know how long we stood there, me staring at it and it staring back at me, unmoving. It was like we were both locked in place. I could feel a cold tingling sensation creeping over my skin, almost like the air itself had grown colder around us. Then, in one quick, jerking movement, it straightened up, standing fully upright. It was huge, towering well over 7 feet, with those long, gaunt arms dangling at its sides. I stumbled backwards, nearly tripping over myself as I turned and bolted back toward the campsite. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see if it was following me. When I burst back into the camp, gasping and shaking, my friends were already half asleep. I tried to explain what I saw, but they just laughed and said it was most probably some animal. But I know what I saw. I still do. It wasn't an animal, it wasn't a person. That thing, whatever it was something else, something that didn't belong in our world. I didn't sleep a wink that night. I kept hearing faint rustling noises outside my tent. I thought I could feel those eyes watching me through the trees. When dawn finally came, I felt this overwhelming sense of relief. We packed up and hiked back down that morning, and I haven't been back to Rocky Mountain National Park since. I don't know what I saw out there, and I don't think I ever want to.